everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview interview, I'm taking a look at Stuka Leader, designed by Chuck Seegert and published by DVG. Stuka Leader is a solitaire, resource, and squadron management game where you play out missions from a chosen campaign on the tactical display board. In this game, you play as a squadron commander in the German Luftwaffe in campaigns ranging from the beginning of World War II in Poland, 1939, to the end of the war on the Eastern or Western Front. Your goal is to survive your missions with your increasingly experienced pilots, whether they be bombing, escort, air defense missions, and destroy targets to accrue victory points to compare against the campaign goals. Let's do a quick overview. I have a complete playthrough video for an in-depth look at the game. I'll cover my pros and cons, and we'll have my final thoughts. All right, let's go down to the table for the overview. All right, if you're already familiar with the Leader series, you can probably skip over this overview. There's only a few small changes, a few small additions in Stuka Leader compared to previous Leader games. You can go on to my pros and cons. Otherwise, let's kind of start at the beginning. So, in a Leader game, specifically Stuka Leader, you're going to pick from one of these campaigns. Campaigns are going to be different parts of the historical parts of World War II that Germany and Luftwaffe fought in. So whether it's Focke-Wulf, the invasion of Poland, 1939, Stalemate in the West, Dunkirk, 1940, the Total War, more of a larger campaign, things Titan, 1943, etc., right? There's a large stack of campaigns. What you're going to do is you're going to grab a campaign sheet, and on here, it's going to tell you a bunch of different things. These numbers here are going to be the targets. That's how you're going to build your target deck. You're then going to have a event deck, not affected by the campaign sheet. That's going to be all the available event cards. You're going to look at what bandits are here, looking at the campaign year and then the bandits. You're going to build a draw cup filled with sites and bandits. You're going to see what aircraft are available. When you pick a campaign, you then are going to pick whether you want to fly short, medium, or long campaign. It's going to give you how many days you're going to be flying it, how many SO or special operations points you get to spend, and then how much fuel you were given at the beginning of it. During each day, you're going to be drawing target cards. Remember, the target cards are determined right here. Selecting missions, flying those missions. Missions are going to be things like, say, bombing this fuel depot. Now, there's a variety of different types of missions. This is one small example. And this is actually was an example mission, although not campaign, from my playthrough video. I had 3 aircraft go on this against this target, the fuel depot. So the number of aircraft listed you can go on is right here. This is how many hits you have to do on that target. And setting up the tactical display area here, which you can see on the board, is how many sites, which are going to be ground-based, anti-air defenses, and then bogies, which start off as bogies and then turn into bandits or enemy aircraft, are going to be set up in either the target area in the middle or each of the approaches around this perimeter here. So you pick a target, you decide to go on it, you build your squadron. The squadron is going to be made up of a certain amount of aircraft. You're then going to pick out basically on your own based on the things such as the skill level of each of the pilots, types of aircraft, and then of course the goals that you're going to want to have, right? So for instance, you're going to want to maybe have, some Ju-87 Stukas, right? Now, you have to make sure to check the experience level of your different pilots. You're going to build out your squadron. You have some Stukas. You have, an HE-111, right, a medium bomber. You're going to need some ME-109s, E, G, whichever depends on the year they're available. There's going to be a bunch of information on the card. A whole lot of information, honestly. I'm not going to go into all the details of it. Check the playthrough for more of those details. But basically, depending on their stress level, the pilot's going to be okay or shaken. It's going to determine they're slow or fast, when they can go, what's their air-to-air, air-to-ground bonuses, what they can equip for ordnance or miscellaneous, such as drop tank, and then what maybe they have for guns. Things like the Stuka bomber, you can see has the variety of ordnance he can carry. He does have a gunner in the back. Also, he gets a bonus to his dive attacks, which obviously the Stukas were famous for. So, variety of different aircraft, variety of different pilots. You're building out your squadron at the beginning, possibly spending those SO points. Some of the aircraft you're going to see on the side will have a special cost for SO points. So some are going to be free, some you spend extra, and then there's going to be special ordinances depending on the campaign. So those list special weapons here. So these are weapons that are available, but you're going to have to spend SO points to purchase them. Otherwise, more basic bombs are just going to be free as part of the game. You go on your targets, pick your target, you go on your mission. You're going to have your aircraft in the pre-approach areas, and following the sequence of play, you're doing things like drawing event cards to see what happens, placing sights. You're going to be placing your aircraft, and then the bogeys are going to appear. When you engage the bogeys in combat in the different areas, they're going to get engaged in those bogeys, which start off as simple bogey, no bogey chits, will then turn into actual aircraft. So suddenly you are flying against, pick a good aircraft here. Suddenly you're flying against, a Hurricane, right? Now he's only green pilot, so he's not too big of a challenge, but there's going to be average, there's going to be veteran pilots. They're going to have greater bonuses and make that much harder for you to shoot down. You're going to want to guard your bombers if you're on a bombing mission, such as going after this fuel depot. You know, in my playthrough, I sent a Stuka to bomb it, but I had 2 Me-109s acting as escorts to deal with any bandits that we encountered along the way, which we did deal with quite a few. You will bomb the target, shoot down enemy bombers, whatever the target card asks for. If you are successful, you will then get victory points. You get to adjust the recon or intel track on the campaign board. Those are going to be things down here that are going to influence how many bogeys, whether it's hurting you by adding more bogeys or helping you with being able to take away sights and bogeys. Recon, the higher the number, the more target cards you get to draw and then pick from when you choose your mission. At the very end, you add up those victory points for destroying the targets, and you're going to compare it to a chart based on whether you have short, medium, or long campaign. See your VPs. Were you dismal, or were you great, or somewhere in between? There is obviously a lot more to the game, depending on target areas. In this one, in Stuka Leader, going to be managing fuel a little bit. So based on the color here, you can see this target cost for fuel and stress. So farther away, right, is going to be not only more stress, but it's going to take more fuel. You have fuel, your SO points and supplies, and then you have ambulance for pilots. Pilots in this game can suffer wounds. Yellow is going to be less serious, no effect, how dare they, suffer stress, etc. All the way up to the more serious ones, such as KIA. So instead of just being your aircraft injured or your aircraft destroyed, there's also a possibility of your pilots being injured. You will manage those wounds using medics, which again are a finite resource. Drawing from the cups, drawing cards, placing a lot of randomness involved. You're outfitting your squadron, you're designing your squadron, managing it, and sending them out on the mission, giving them the best chance for success and the best chance to earn victory points to get a higher score on your campaigns. Quick and dirty explanation and overview of Stuka Leader in particular and the Leader series in general. Again, for a very in-depth look at the game, check out my complete playthrough of a Stuka Leader mission, specifically bombing a fuel depot with 3 of my favorite pilots. Other than that, I think that's good enough for the overview. Let's go on to pros and cons, and as always, cons first. All right. My first con is, unfortunately, the rulebook. The rulebook for Stuka Leader feels just like a step back from Chuck Seegert, who was the designer of Stuka Leader, his last design, Zero Leader. The layout is okay, but there's simply some missing information. An example is the wound cup. When is it created, and what goes in it? The first time the rulebook mentions a wound cup is under sight attacks. It instructs you to draw either a yellow or red wound counter from the wound cup. But the rulebook, unless I missed it, never tells you how to create a wound cup, when to create it, nor exactly what goes in it. Now, obviously, right, you can figure it out based on context and based on looking through the counter sheets and seeing the different wound counters. But do we really have to conduct a little investigation to piece together the proper setup and sequence of play? The rulebook for Stuka Leader should feel more refined than Zero Leader, not less. My second issue with the game is there is errata for some of the campaign sheets, specifically concerning the SO points given for the various campaign lengths, right? How many SO points you get in the short, medium, and long campaigns. I didn't count exactly how many of the campaign sheets have that errata. I was going to count through and give an exact number, but honestly don't care that much. I believe it's approximately half of them, though. So it's more than one, but it's less than all of them. I've also read that the included player aids have some issues as well. The designer, Chuck Seegert, has made updated campaign sheets and player aids available for download on Board Game Geek. And I did print out the player aids for myself from my game when I'm playing. So I never use the player aids included in the box. I just want you to be aware that both the numbers on some of the campaign sheets have been updated, along with the player aid cards. In the end, when someone spends as much money as a new game in the Leader series costs, it's really unfortunate that you have to then spend time and more money printing updated materials for the game if you want the best experience possible. If I'm being honest, I'm disappointed with the rulebook and components, as Zero Leader was a step in the right direction, yet now Stuka Leader feels like a step back. Okay, that's it for the cons. On to the pros. First off, the game here is a gorgeous production. The counters, they're nice and clear. Everything looks really good. Some of them have new graphics on them. Some are old, kind of old style graphics we've been seeing for years now. But either way, they all look really good. The cards, there's a lot of information on them. I'm not going to lie. And it can be overwhelming at first. But I think that, if you spend just a little time playing, they become really easy to read and you understand. You get a lot of good information on them, and it's divided fairly well, so at a glance you can usually pretty quickly see exactly what you're looking for. The tactical board itself too is just fantastic looking. I love how thematic the game feels overall when it's sitting on your table. They also included some tactical overlays. I showed those off in my Recon unboxing that change the center area here to give you a different graphical look. They don't change the gameplay at all, which is maybe a missed opportunity. I would have maybe liked to see maybe some modifiers, visibility, bombing runs type stuff, just based on what the graphics fit, right? If it's cloudy or if it was snowy or whatever. But those graphical overlays, they do slide around a bit on the mounted board, but overall, it's still nice that they're included. Second, you get so much content in the base box for Stuka Leader, it's ridiculous. Now, yes, I would have loved to have maybe seen some more of the Eastern Front content in the base box instead of in its own expansion. But honestly, there is so much in the base box, it's ridiculous. Tons of campaigns, stacks of counter sheets, hundreds of cards, which stacks of them all over the place around here, right? There is so much stuff that just to sit and play through all the campaigns in the base box, you're probably going to have hundreds of hours of entertainment ahead of you. The game isn't inexpensive, but it does make up for it by being filled to the brim with content. Now, finally, the game system, has always been and remains a joy to play. I'm not usually much for resource management simulations, but with the Leader series here, it's so easy to set up a campaign and manage a squadron that I don't want to let that idea deter you from trying the game if you've never played a Leader game before. And honestly, even if you're not in the mood for that, and sometimes I'm not, I find it a lot of fun to sometimes just do one-off missions. I will draw a random target from the target deck. I will set up the mission and go fly it with, maybe random pilots or hand-picked pilots and ordnance. You can then make it harder or easier by adjusting your pilot's experience levels and access to certain ordnances. Stuka Leader, like most Leader games, really has a ton of variety and replayability in just the base box. And there are multiple expansions available when or if you're ready for them. There are a couple new mechanisms and ideas included in Stuka Leader. An example is that idea of fuel, right? Having to pay fuel costs for aircraft to fly different targets. It's a great idea. It's not implemented overly well or overly in-depth, as I believe every aircraft has the same effective range and fuel costs, but at least there is an extra bit of chrome you can use in your game to increase the realism a tad, and just something else to manage. Another example is the pilot wounds, right, and the medics. While, like I already said, the wound cup isn't explained super well either, having your pilots potentially suffer wounds and having to use medical resources to heal them, much like the fuel mechanism, is a fun little addition to the system. All right, those are my pros and cons. Let's end with my final thoughts. Stuka Leader is another solid entry in the Leader series of solitaire wargames from DVG. It doesn't revolutionize the system. Honestly, I can't name a Leader game that has done that in a long time. But if you are already a fan of the series, if you're a fan of the theme, or you're just looking for a good entry point, you can't really go wrong with Stuka Leader. It does stutter on takeoff, thanks to a less than perfect rulebook and some misprinted components. But once you are flying, you'll discover how much fun building out your squadron and attacking various targets can be, even if it does sometimes feel like you've flown these missions before in other leader games. Now, I do want to see Chuck Seegert and DVG do better in the future with their rulebooks and final printing components. A fun gameplay loop and a new theme goes a long way, but if the rulebooks and quality control don't improve, I for one will be very disappointed, and I don't think I'll be the only one. Now, if you want to know more about the Luftwaffe and want something to put you in the mood for playing Stuka Leader, I can recommend The Luftwaffe, The History of Nazi Germany's Air Force During World War II by Charles River Editors. I listened to the audiobook, and while it was only, I think, 2 hours playtime, it was interesting and enjoyable. Now, in 2 hours, you aren't going to get incredibly in-depth, but you may learn a thing or two about how and why the Luftwaffe operated like it did. Alright, thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please let me know what you think of my video and this game in the comments below. And until next time, everyone, later.